I'm David Iggy Igowitz. Everyone called me Iggy because my last name, they couldn't pronounce it. I'm a semi-retired pediatric dentist. I'm doing 2 days next week. I still really enjoy it, as I talked about earlier, and I went to Guatemala, and that really, you add value, and what we're doing here right now is adding value. I'm going to try to add some value to you. As I see this time clock going down, I better get started. All right. And we're going to go over a deal now that we took down last March, but we're going to go right into it. So this was a deal. Sam is, and everyone here, you heard Sam and John speak. Sam is the one who finds deals. And Sam found this great deal about a year prior to when we closed it. And it was a 2-property portfolio, 162 units, very close together, mileage, in Savannah, Georgia. I didn't put that there, did I? And the situation for the seller, so there's always situations, you need to find out why the seller wants to sell. Sometimes it's making money. This time it was a little different. The seller wanted his daughter to take over the property. Daughter didn't want to do it. It's a lot of work, as you guys know. So what ended up happening, he was taking, she didn't want to do it, and he was taking maintenance calls from his yacht. And so he lived in New York. He would fly down to Hilton Head in his private jet, and then he'd go on his yacht, play golf, and he was taking maintenance calls. This is, he was and still is a hard worker, but he also has other properties in New York. The deal's in Savannah. That makes it really, really difficult to operate. He was in the middle of rehab, and when I show you these units, you're going to be shocked at the price he was spending. He was spending about $40,000 a unit to rehab these units. His idea was that he was going to fix these once and not have to deal with it for 10 or 15 years. The problem was the residents that were coming in, you know what they can do, and to these units, no matter how much money you spend on them. So what ended up happening? Well, this was an off-market opportunity. This was after working with a seller for a long time, and Sam goes into labor. He finally, after 1 year, decides to sign the LOI, the day she's in labor. And we're like, really? And we agreed on a purchase price. There's a purchase price. It was $85,840 a unit for 162 units. And this slide, I wish I could blow it up. I couldn't combine everything together, but I'm just going to do this. So talking about doing due diligence, that's really, really important. This property, because what he was doing when he would rehab these units, he's a contractor by trade, and what he would do is he would take the entire building, remove all the residents from the entire building, renovate the entire building, and then replace the residents. We all know the problem. Now, if you pay cash for a property and you own it outright, you can get away with that. But see, you can't really see the T12. It ends up being a big negative number. It was like negative 700,000, negative 730, I think, the math for the year prior that we bought it. So that's how much he was losing truly on the property by doing it this way. Everyone here in the room doesn't do it this way, but this is it. So when we bought it, it was about 60-ish% occupied. It was probably lower because the residents that were not paying. And in fact, during due diligence, this was, I wish I had a picture of it. There was literally a barbecue pit in one of the apartments. So they decided to cook in the middle of the freaking apartment. These kind of things are unheard of, and it's really training your residents. But these are the things, that's why Jennifer was talking about inspecting every unit. And you either hire a team and you pay them outright, not your property management company, unless it's your own property management company. But you inspect these units, and then you find these kind of things, and you need to unpack it. So let's move forward with this. All right. It was 2023. It was the beginning of 2023. We all know financing was very, very difficult, especially in a pretty heavy lift. At the time, we didn't view it as a heavy lift, but this was a pretty heavy lift. This was in the south side of Savannah, a pretty good area. The rents were way under market. So due to, and I always put in air quotes, inflation, was it a supply issue, demand issue? We can get to that another time. And the aggressive rate hikes, it was tough to get debt. And we didn't, we looked at various sources. We looked at, recourse bank, and we're like, eh. And we also, you can't use agency on this. This is also a cardinal product, so that would be tough. And it wasn't stabilized. So we're left with bridge debt. And as everyone was talking about bridge debt, it can be quite difficult. And bridge debt, we were like, what do we do right now? Do we want to do a floating bridge debt and have to, buy a cap, or do we just fix it? And we ended up deciding, you know what? Let's just fix the rate. We'll figure out the cash flow. If the cash flow is with that 8.4% interest only, we're golden. And so we knew that it would be about 13-ish months on our pro forma before we would start breaking even and then go from there. So to us, that was a good deal. So what we did, we looked at the terms. They were testing at a debt yield of 2%. This comes back. And, the debt reserve, the reserves that they wanted were minimal. They actually had me write in pen on the term sheet and scribble whatever I didn't like on their term sheet. I'm like, these guys are great. Bridge debt is awesome. I was like, why doesn't everyone do bridge debt? Got to my head. And so they gave me the confidence that everything was going to go well. And I think Tyler talked about this before. It's bridge debt. Yeah. And I did mention that. And there's a saying that I say, and this is truly because I've heard horror stories with bridge debt. It ends up being glorified mafia. I hate to say it out loud, but that's really what it is. They want to hold your money, and they'll change at the last minute. I'm sorry if there's any other lenders in here besides Tyler, but that's what it ends up being. They called me up and they said, we're going to have some minor changes, to the term sheet, and we're going to increase the debt yield. This one I freaked out over, and I didn't need to. It was just the changes because I wasn't expecting anything, because I said we already negotiated this. So the first thing, they increased it to 4%. That wasn't a big deal because the deal was cash flowing, but I kept fighting it, and this is a whole day's process. You're going back and forth. And then this one really, really hurt. They increased the interest reserves requirement for 7 months. So they held on to that money just in case our NOI or the amount of income we had wouldn't cover their debt service. And so then they also changed that it would be only a 10% variance to budget. So we had a budget for the CapEx funding. And if we varied at all 10% wise, they wouldn't release any funds. Oh, and by the way, 12 months later, you're going to pay interest on those funds. And even you can't use them. So the total holdback ended up being $1.2 million. That's a freaking big holdback because we allocate 6 months to reserves. They were trying to hold the reserves in their bank. Actually, they didn't try. They did. And I was very upset. So I wasn't this chipper self that you see up here right now. And I wasn't all smiley. And I regret what I said to our liaison that day. And I apologize profusely because that's not me. And I'm at my best when I'm smiling and happy. So, all right. We really did contemplate walking. And we knew we would lose our earnest money, and that would be it. But, what we did, and it's just ironic because my wife sent me a post today, before this. She didn't even know that what I was speaking on. And she said, did you read this book, Ego is Thy Enemy? And I was like, oh my God, I did. And I remember this. And what we had to realize was you have to really put your ego aside. We just got really hit hard. And they just really put us in the shitter. I mean, there's no other way of saying it. And they really took advantage of us. But I was like, is the deal still work? And Sam, John, and I got together and we said, does it still work? And we're like, hell yeah, it still works. So we're going to move forward. We put our ego aside, signed the paperwork. We got it done. Obviously, the bridge lender was happy. We had drinks with her in San Diego. So it was all good. All right, so things are rolling along. So I remember how we took it over. It ended up being probably like 55% realistically, when we took it over, occupied, economically occupied. We're in September 2023, we're cranking along, we're getting it stabilized, getting it back to, together. We're 75% pre-leased. We're rocking it. We feel really, really good. And then we get a phone call or text. I can't remember. I was trying to pull it up on my text and I couldn't find it. Get a text that there was a resident that was cooking in one of the units, and I'm like, okay, blah, blah, blah. And there was a small kitchen fire. And I'm like, okay, whatever, go back to bed. Take a look at the pictures the next morning, and I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, that's no small freaking kitchen fire. That's 2 units burned, And so that's after they removed all the debris. And, he was cooking with the oil, and luckily no one was hurt. And he woke up after the fire and pulled out the other residents, so everyone was fine. This kind of stuff you don't want to get, So that is on the back burner now. We ended up having that, boarded up to protect everybody, and then, moved on from there. So in the back end of that, there's a property management situation. So our first property manager is really cranky. She was the one who got us to that 75%. She's getting those rents. We're above pro forma rents. And we're like, this is going great. Well, she had to be let go for non-compliance or not being orderly. We'll just put it that. Our second property manager decides to leave because his significant other is moving back to town. This is where we restructure our property management company, and where's Wendy? Wendy's over there. She takes over on that side. Katie in the back over there, she comes down and sets freaking goals for Miss Marla, as you can see in the sheet. This just gives me chills because this is when the magic happened. And she sets her goals, and it's game on. And I even felt, Katie went down there. She was signing leases, helping it get, stabilized. So remember, it was 75%. It ends up, these are the actuals, from January. And you can see, these are, it's split in 2 properties. So they were collecting 86,000, upon takeover. Then in January, it was 160. In July, it was like 192-ish. Economic occupancy, not only were they collecting, they were truly collecting. These weren't just, filling up units. They hit the hurdles and the goals, and they went above and beyond. And, the same thing, the expenses, vary, but you can see the NOI is shooting up. All right. Unfortunately, I'm going to try to speed it up. I'm running out of time. But unfortunately, we outperformed our pro forma. What was the problem with that? Those 7 months that they held in interest reserves, we couldn't pull from because we didn't go below that. And we kept asking, hey, we're doing so well. Why can't we pull from it? And it was going back and forth with the lender. So we were forced into an arrangement where we either had to get out of this bridge debt to recapture that, $1.2 million so we could keep, moving along, or we could either refinance or sell it. We looked at selling it. We knew that the market was going to be really, really tight. And we knew that if you put it under contract, it could fall through because we don't know who the buyer is in the financing now. So we're like, why don't we refi it? Why don't we refi it, and we'll refi it. This was the predicted cash flows after a refi and after we pulled out some capital. It's at the bottom. That's after all fees and debt service. That's how we express it. So you end up a year 5 afterwards that it would be close to 10% cash on cash. Those are true numbers. And this is me outside the sign. Shannon Aronson, who's not here, actually took that picture of me because she wanted her. So I was like, I got to do that. And this was just an investment in, I think it was, here's this one. In 16 months, we returned 12%. Doesn't sound like a huge win until you really dig into it. We caught up on all that 8% preferred return up to July of this year. And now we structure our deals just like everyone in this room does, that they don't lose equity. A lot of times when you see a return of capital event, that you lose equity in the deal, we never do that. They keep their equity. So all limited partners, that's me included, don't lose equity when there's a refi. So I just want to go over this slide and then I'll be done. Miss Marla and Mr. Drake, he's the maintenance supervisor there, just rocked it. They had such synergy together. And that's, just combining those forces. Just seeing these numbers in front of me, it was huge. 190,000 per month over June, and it was like 192. I don't know what it is this month. I forgot. And, when you start around 85,000. This was the crazy thing, and this is where we also got hurt on the refi because we all know how financing is. The purchase price was around $14 million. It sold, the refinance appraisal was $20 million. But the original refinance, when we went under, right before term sheets, we were getting estimates between 24 and 26 million. So the proceeds would have been a lot higher. And we would have been, I would have had a bigger smile. But it's still a freaking huge win. And, it's really a win and to show when you really, push it. You can really do some amazing thing. And Katie's taking pictures of me. I should be taking pictures of Katie. She slept down there in Savannah, took up her time, really cranked it. So thank you. Thank you.
That's
and
an awesome deal, buddy.
Sincere.
How many doors was that?
162.
Man, that's
nice.
nice.
That's what we did with part of the money.
It's all ranch style?
What's that?
It's all ranch like that?
Yeah,
I love those.
Cardinal
Nobody
bread.
above you, below you, just, I love
they
those,
love
man.
It.
Beautiful. Nice job. Give him a big hand.